What's up, everybody, and welcome to TheProtoArt. Hope everyone's safe out there, and while you have some time on your hands, I'm going to show you a few options for photo retouching. So when you're photo retouching, there are a few steps that you want to make sure you check. You're going to look for, especially with portraits, looking for redness. You're going to look for any blemishes like acne. You want to work on eyes, hair, whatever it may be. These are all tools and things that you should be keeping in mind while working on the image overall. Subtle changes can make big differences at the end. So I'm going to be looking at these actions and seeing how user-friendly they are, for one. If it requires a lot more work than the others, because I want this to be aimed at people who may not have any experience with Photoshop at all and not know what all the tools do, but they know they have some photos they want to work on. So that's the main goal for today. I will include links to everything below, so feel free to ask, but they're there below, as well as links to where you can download and purchase these. So one's going to be from the Creative Market. It's not free, but they offer tons of services, templates, actions, brushes, and you can imagine anything and everything between they have there. Phlearn and Piximperfect kind of offer similar services where they teach you everything from beginning to advanced lessons in Photoshop, Illustrator, and much more. I'm just kind of giving the overall review. So without further ado, let's get into this. Piximperfect first. So everything's loaded up, settings are all the same. The image mode, it's on RGB, 8 bits, and it's all ready to go. So image selected, go to Piximperfect, select it. Now it becomes available to play as an action. I'll hit play. Let's go from here. So Phlearn and Piximperfect offer similar things where they do frequency separation, which separates your textures and the color. Like I said, it gives you more flexibility with editing independently. So that's the first thing he's doing here, is blurring the surface. It's going to give you an even skin tone. And all these won't be the same settings when you're working on your photos, because each photo is unique. So you do want to adjust sliders and accordingly to your own image. So it looks like that's all it requires, is hitting the play, selecting those two, and I'm gonna have to hit continue. My settings may be a little different than yours, but it should give you a pretty honest review of how this is going. So hit play. Now brush is selected, everything's 100% opacity and flow. I should just start painting away. And like that, the skin, it looks like it's getting smoothed out. The overall tone, the redness is kind of being reduced quite a bit. There are some, larger areas that I would work on, I should say, focus on. But not bad at all. So I'm still kind of deciding in this video how I want to organize this, honestly. So if I were to approach this myself, and there are a million different ways to do this, but I would focus on major areas like the acne, using like a spot healing brush or clone stamp, getting rid of main areas that I see issues with prior to even starting this, and it'll kind of give you a better end result. But that's just how I would approach it. Everyone has their own methods, so what works for you, go for that. So let's see, before, after, not bad. So let's go back to Phlearn's and run his action. So they're pretty much identical, except Phlearn gives you slightly more details as to what you're doing when you run the action. So the first one's telling you it's blurring the skin. And he uses the Gaussian blur versus Piximperfect uses surface blur, I believe it was. But still acquiring the same effect, and Piximperfect was slightly more blurred around there. I told you I wasn't going to fiddle with it, but I want them to be similar enough so you can get an honest result. So I do have to adjust this a little bit. So I'm going to hit OK. Done. Now the skin texture and color are on different layers. Okay, so it kind of explains what it does. So this doesn't have an option just to brush. You do have to do a little bit more work. So on this frequency separation, what was this called? Sorry. The LF layer, lower frequency, I guess. You'd have to select colors with the picker and start painting and try to match your colors. You'd have a low flow. So it requires you to do a little bit more work, but you can kind of get more accurate results doing it this way. As far, you can get real specific results, I should say. You can do the same with Piximperfects. Let me start this over because I know I kind of fudged it up a little bit. There you go. So you can get similar results by doing the same thing. I do like how he made this a smart filter, meaning you can go back and make changes. So if I don't like the result, I can adjust the slider and see how much it's affecting it and say okay. So I do like Piximperfect's idea of keeping it as a smart filter. Sorry, brain fart. But I do also like the fact that he has an option to paint with a brush. Although I do like Phlearn's fact that you can get more in depth with it and explains what each one of these actions it's doing as the action is progressing, what each function's doing. So I like his explanations more than the Piximperfects, although I like the simplicity of Piximperfects. If I'm just a beginner with no knowledge of how to use this, that's my thought process. Next, I'll go to the last one, which is this Retouch Portrait panel. So Retouch Portrait post-production presets. So this one is one that you have to purchase. It's not a free one. And what I like most about this versus the other two, it gives you a ton of options. It explains what it's doing. And if you have no concept of how to use or experience with photo retouching, it kind of breaks it all down for you. And it even gives you a few more options of things to focus on, like eyes, hair, which the other two didn't. They mainly focus on smoothing out skin and blurring it a little bit. So let's start with this. Sorry, I had a burp. Base retouch layer. I'm gonna hit play. So it tells you what to do. So now you're just removing acne and wrinkles. So that's what I would have done myself. So already off top, it's telling you you're gonna focus on these main areas. So like I said, you do have to use a little bit more. This requires a little bit more work, kind of like Phlearn's, where you do need to do more painting. But the end result is a whole lot smoother and more realistic than the other two, I felt. So the next step, it says, is to choose which one on step 2. Is it a small photo? Not really. Medium, it's a medium-sized portrait. You have your super close-up, your medium size, yeah, you get it. So this is like a medium size. So we're gonna hit play. So knowing what I know from fiddling with this frequency separation, that's kind of what this layer is doing. It didn't explain it as clearly, but that's what this layer is. It's like a beginning frequency separation stage. You can tell by it's being grayed out, and what is selected right now is the clone stamp tool. So it's not really affecting any color, it's affecting the texture. So that's why I'm sampling any place here, and I'm replacing textures on my photo. So let's move on to step 3. So it says remove redness. So this actually gives you a redness option too. That's really useful. I hit play, paint over the skin. It's supposed to remove any redness. Let's see. Next one is a skin softening. So a lot of the major heavy lifting we did was in the first steps of actually removing the main pimples and a few of the blotchy parts of the skin. That makes this step seem so much more smoother. So The next step says texture. So after blurring it, it's giving you an option to bring texture back, which is cool. So you don't want it to look unrealistic. Maybe you do. Maybe it's an effect you want. Not for this one though. So we're adding texture back. So it's kind of giving the illusion of giving you like pores and stuff back in your face if you overdid it. I understand. So it says whitening teeth. So she doesn't have too many teeth showing in this particular image. Then eye whitening. You have an option for eyelashes. Enhance eyebrows. And then reduce circles under the eyes. You can just see how many more steps this thing requires, but it's also explaining what it's doing, which is really cool for me because, like I said, if I didn't know what I was doing, and first time I'm trying to retouch a photo, that's what I want to know, what the hell I'm doing. So that's what this step is. It's brightening her eyes. It's a really cool looking eyes. So and then face volume. So contouring. If you're not familiar, you can Google face contouring, and I'm gonna pause this right here. And welcome back. So I googled quickly face contouring just so you kind of get an understanding of what this is. This is an example I just found real fast. It's just kind of accentuating different parts of your face, adding highlights or shadow to bring different things out. And you can accomplish this in Photoshop by creating new layers. Let me get a different example here. So open up a brand new image. So if I was going to contour this face, of course I would do the same steps of removing blemishes, but just a quick idea. You would get like your highlights, and then you would paint, kind of based off of that little reference photo there. Here goes brush. And I can bring the flow up a lot more. I'm just going to super exaggerate this. So your highlighted area will be right here. By the eyes. Chin. And then you would add the darker section. And then you would blur that layer. See what I'm saying? So let me start that up real quick. We go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and you would blur it so it looks a little not quite as like foggy and misty like that, but you want to have it where just the edges are kind of gone. You know, add a mask on it, kind of paint out the areas you don't want. But it's a quick way you can like digitally add makeup to a face. You can keep adding layer after layer after layer. But that's one way I would also pursue this. But anyway, that's kind of what this is doing right here when it says contouring the face. So you're adding the burn tool and the dodge tool. So dodge tool highlights and burn darkens. So same concept. Say last step, retouch done. Okay, and then they have a few more options to add like overall effects on it. You can add a black and white image, a few more, what is this, vintage film presets. Let's see, what's this, tan skin. I'm just gonna say soft contrast. Alright, so to kind of compare A and B, let me make a snapshot of this real quick. So the before and after. Before, after. And we'll go back to Phlearn's. So minimize this. So undo, 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 undo. Okay. So just to be fair, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this so it's a little bit more accurate. Out of the three, although it's expensive, I do like the option from the Creative Market. Next would be Phlearn's, because it does explain what you're doing a little bit more and you kind of understand why you're doing what you're doing. But if you're looking for simplicity and just a really quick, plug, play, and go, Piximperfect is definitely the way to go for you. But that's pretty much it, guys. This is before and after. Major difference. Of course, the more time you would spend with this, the end result will look a lot better. So take your time with these things. There's no real rush unless you have some crazy deadline. But that's pretty much it, guys. So Phlearn's, Creative Markets, Piximperfect, and even if you didn't get the end result from either of these from the first go around, you can always keep going. So I'd make like a stamp of this whole thing, hitting Command Option Shift and E. It makes a little stamp. And on this layer, I'd probably correct some of these images, right? Some of these imperfections. So you can still get really good results, even if it's from like Piximperfect's. It just might take a little bit more work. But that's it. So be sure to like, subscribe, check out more videos from myself. And I keep saying it, and it's just life, man. I try to be more reliable, more consistent with my posting of videos. But in the meantime, this is what I can do for you guys. So hopefully this helps somebody out there who is trying to decide on which retouching option to use. Oh, this is one thing I wanted to say real quick. This is a really cool little trick I learned not too long ago, but a really quick and easy way to brighten some eyes. So make a copy of the layer you want. You're gonna add like a little mask on there. Don't worry about it just yet. With that layer selected, you're gonna hit screen. Everything's bright, right? Oh god, don't worry. You're gonna invert your mask so it's hidden, right? Can't see anything? Okay, so with the brush, zoom in. Make your brush really small. Opacity about 100. Flow, keep it at 100 if you want. A small brush, soft one, just gonna paint. And bring back the color. In these eyes. So there we go. Two little tricks there. Hopefully that helps you guys anyway. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.